What's going on, digital wildcatters? Welcome to another week of Oil and Gas Startups Podcast. Got my friend here today, Tad Wallace from Universal Chemical Solutions. What's up, my guy?
Not much, not much. Nice to be here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
kind of see the office. I
like,
dig. We don't
can
have nothing this fancy where I work.
I don't know about fancy. We're just pretty resourceful.
It's interesting with all the cameras. Like, wow, paparazzi and a red carpet.
Anytime someone comes on the podcast, I'm like, hey, don't worry. It's just a conversation. We just got bright lights, cameras, microphones. But
Yeah.
no, man. So this isn't your first time on Digital Wildcatters. You've been at Energy Tech
Mhm.
Night. So maybe first time on the podcast, but some people may recognize you from Energy Tech Night.
That was a fun night. Yeah.
Yeah, you were at New Wave back in
Yeah.
November. So gotten to know you over the last call it 8 months or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, some really cool technology. You brought me a couple samples of crude to actually show me how it works. So first, let's talk about what the technology is.
Mhm.
Just like 2 minute
Yeah.
spiel on it, and then we're gonna get into that in your story.
Yeah, so just a real quick of what we're doing. In today's world, EOR is the name of the game. That's where a lot of energy is being focused at. Me and my team just so happened to have a couple years ago worked with a process to use liquid propane and butane, injecting it into reservoirs to be miscible at low pressures to start moving stuck or residual hydrocarbons left in the reservoir. While doing so, we also put together a couple chemistries, things such as a type of surfactant non-emulsifier. So while we're injecting, we can also work on removing the residual frac water left from the frac. Um, we all know that you don't recover all the frac water, especially out of shale. The
Hmm.
majority of it's left down hole. Well, with that being left down hole, it impedes perm. So in a unique way that my friend Dr. Lau from FESCO kind of thinks about our technology. It's essentially doing three treatments at one time: wellbore stimulation cleanup, miscibility, secondary recovery, and also long-term chemical placement. We can put wax crystal modifiers deep in the reservoir, so as a very waxy, like Eagleford, starts flowing back, we keep the wax in solution. So it's kind of like, as Lau would say, taking three darts, throwing it at the dartboard at one time when everybody else just has one.
Yeah.
So our mechanisms behind the technology are miscibility, wellbore clean out. Then of course, because with propane and butane, you can really dissolve a lot of paraffins that are in your wells.
Yeah.
And as it flows, it also helps your clean up your flow lines on surface.
Yeah.
So real quick on the tech, it's just man, we're throwing down propane and butane, liquid state, a little crazy. Not your backyard propane, but we're putting in the reservoirs and making more oil
Yeah.
for a
Okay.
better return on money.
Let's break this down. I mean, a lot of people that listen to the show are familiar with a lot of the terms that you're using, but
Mhm.
for people that aren't,
Okay.
because you're talking about perm and
Mhm.
EOR and all different types of terms that someone may not be familiar with. Let's do this. Let's talk about what EOR is
Mhm.
first and how it's done traditionally. That
Mhm.
way we can get some context on what that is and how it's done.
Yeah, so EOR is essentially EOR, IOR, enhanced oil recovery, improved oil recovery, which is what we'd call secondary recovery techniques. I.e., you've drilled your well, you've put it into production. That well is now making very little uh, fluids. It's very little production, but you know that you have a lot of fluid down there, but you've lost either reservoir pressure or numerous line of different things. So EOR on a big scale is looking at a reservoir to do secondary enhanced recovery, i.e. CO2 floods, water flooding,
Mm-hmm.
many different things like that. High gas injection, the huff and puff system. That's an EOR, a secondary recovery on an oil well once it's met its non-economic limit. However, the reserve is still there.
Got you. And you brought up a really interesting point when you were talking about some of the issues with fracking. You inject a lot of water downhole,
A lot.
and a lot of that water stays in the
Mhm.
reservoir, and that, to what you said, impedes permeability. And That's something that obviously you have a flow back process
Uh,
after you frack and you try to bring that water back up to
mhm.
surface. But I remember you at Energy Tech Night giving a pretty surprising statistic about how
Mhm.
much water is actually left downhole.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, how much is actually
um,
left down?
so most of the operators we work with, luckily enough to get their data, their most show roughly after a 3-year production period, they're only recovering about 30% of the actual
30%. So they're
water.
leaving 70% of their water
Yeah.
downhole.
So when you're pumping a couple million barrel frac job, you can only imagine the amount of water left in the ground from that.
Yeah.
Where is that water? So for years, the idea was, hey, the water's helping us out because it's displacing oil. But we all know when you look at the decline curves on shale, that cannot be the case because if we start injecting more water, we and refracturing, what we're seeing is even less production coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the water cannot be a helping mechanism.
Yeah.
That we now learned. Took us 10 years. My previous background was I was at gas frac, where we actually fracked wells with liquid propane and butane, zero water on surface.
Yeah.
Um, you see the long term recovery of those wells versus their water fracked wells. Yes, they were probably twice the price just because the fluid system's so high, right?
Yeah.
Versus water. However, the EUR on them and the actual recovery is double in the same amount of time.
Yeah.
So you can look at a 10-year spell and be like, oh, well, that's very economic.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where propane and butane for us came about and what we're doing with it.
Yeah. So tell me about you brought these oil samples over here. If you're not watching on video, you're not gonna be able to see these. But if you're watching on YouTube, we have post treated and pre treated, and you told me to shake these up. Post treated's over in this hand, and you can see how quickly this crude falls down the jar.
Mhm.
This one is still accumulated up here and still falling. This post treated glass is pretty clear, and so you said the butane is what
It's in
allows
there.
that. Yeah.
Yes. So what we did is we injected on a well in South Texas, oil well in the San Miguel Formation. We went down and did a stimulation. We threw a little surfactant in it, and we took samples of all the fluids pre-hand and then post-treatment. Because of course, when anybody does a big project like this, it's all about you know testing, 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 really understanding what mechanisms are working and what mechanisms may not be working.
Hmm.
So we got water samples, we got gas samples, anything you think of. We go down, we do the job. Um, Wonderful job. It went off great. Step Energy Services, who we license our technology
Yeah, I
to.
was gonna mention that
Um,
Step
yeah,
uses it.
dude, they rocked it.
Which Step is one of the larger
Service companies.
service
Mhm.
companies, primarily up in Canada, right?
And I'm Canada and the U.S. now. They got a pretty good standing in the Midland
Oh, okay.
basin. They're bringing on, I believe, a couple more crews in the Texas region. Of course, South Texas is where the LPG
Yeah.
division is located out of. And no, Step is a pretty good size international player. I know they have moved, I think, internationally, or moving in that direction. They've been and a great big brother for us. So yeah, we licensed the technology out to them. So we're very blessed in that. And then on the same job, who did all the testing with us, I have to say thank you to the guys at Fesco. If that's a company you guys haven't talked to, you got to hear their history. It's a Texas oil company
Yeah.
history, man. No debt in over 40 years.
That's
You may want
crazy.
to talk to these guys.
Yeah.
They got a secret, right? No, so we did the job, we tested, and then once again, we tested all the flow back after the job, and we were able to prove some of the things that we're really looking for on these big, large scale horizontals. And the nice thing for this is I was actually have this is data I own. So I
Yeah.
can actually talk about this
Yeah.
data. It's interesting if you have something good, people don't let you talk about it.
Yeah.
And now we're working going into big horizontals. But what we were able to prove was you can achieve miscibility at a very low pressure. The Huff and Puff high pressure compression systems, the big thing that EOG and Hess and some guys have used. And what that is doing is taking your field gas you're producing,
Hmm.
kind of your propanes and butanes,
Hmm.
and high pressure just injecting them into the reservoir.
Yeah.
And you're trying to force the molecules in to the oil.
Yeah.
Well, you need a lot of pressure to do that. And it means a lot of energy. It means a
Hmm.
lot of cost. We were able to go out underneath $250,000 and take a well that was doing roughly a barrel a day. The flow back on it was at 30 barrels a day. 2 days ago, she was still making 6 barrels a day, and this has been 85 days later.
Yeah.
The original IP on the well was, 15 something barrels a day, and we're still holding at 6.
Yeah.
So for a cost to scale, right? And this is where we're actually very happy to get ready to do right now at the end of the month is an operator we're working with is going to let us have some data on if you could take 1,000 barrel of well IP that is now doing 20 barrels a day, and you bring that well back up to its same mimic, let's say 800 barrels, and 60 days later, she's holding half the IP at 4 or 500. That is a very economic system right now in today's market.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, it's also the most environmentally friendly way to do secondary recovery. Our CO2 output, just our fuel burned versus a refrac on a big well,
Yeah.
we're only burning 390 gallons of fuel to do our whole job.
Yeah.
They're burning 79. I want to almost say 700,000 gallons.
Yeah.
To pull off a refrac.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when you have a frac spread out there, you're going to be using a ton of diesel.
So we're still using a frac pump.
So let's, in a huff and puff, essentially, let's lay this out for someone that may not be familiar with it. You're coming into the backside of that reservoir essentially and injecting gas and trying to force the oil into the wellbore of the producing well.
You're trying to force the molecules into the oil to make it lighter, like you see here.
Got you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For you guys, you're actually injecting down the producing wellbore and essentially
right into the rock.
Yeah, right into the rock. And
Yes,
then, okay. Now let's talk about surface level operations. Like you just said, typical refrac, you're going to bring an entire frac spread out there and, you're going to try to re-stimulate this thing. And really, you get kind of dicey results from a lot of refrac methods. You guys are bringing out one high pressure pump.
Maybe 2, depending on the pressure I need to get to. Yeah.
1 day operation.
Single operation, daylight hours only.
Mm-hmm.
So the big difference between us and a refrac, like you're going on, is not just the amount of equipment needed, amount of time, but we're also not re-injecting the fluid that we know is creating damage.
Mm-hmm.
Right? For a much smaller charge, we're going to take the fluid that you've produced, essentially a hydrocarbon, and go down and work the wellbore backwards.
Yeah.
The refrac, it seems good, like, oh, it works really well, but when you start breaking down economics and long-term production, you may get a boost, but that boost is even shorter than the original decline.
Yeah.
And then you almost see the wells fall underneath where they were before the well was even refract.
Yeah, you may do more long-term damage potentially.
Exactly. So what's nice about what we're doing is there's no damage created. There's nothing I can do to make the thing worse.
Yeah.
like there's a lot of guys.
It's a pretty high floor.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, it's not going to get worse.
Yeah, I can get, but and really in oil and gas, when you have to take risk, right? You have to really take into consideration, is a refract going to hit me? Yeah. But once you sit back and think about it, well, if I'm injecting the fluid I'm making, at worst case scenario, I'm going to zero out and do no damage.
Yeah.
No damage done.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the whole medical thing, right? Just don't create any more worse than you've done. And the ability to add surfactants and all that really starts to add and encompass a really good technology that's simple, in, out, quick. Because I truly believe the oil business is moving into efficiencies of EOR versus drill bit.
Yeah.
Some of our prime areas in the country are drilled up.
Yeah.
Or closing in fast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we're running out of tier 1 rock, right?
For sure.
Yeah. And I was actually on a panel this week, and Paul Treadwell from previously at Parsley said that everyone's the spectrum of what tier 1 rock is shifting.
Yes.
And so now
tier
people
2, tier 1.
calling their tier 2 rock
Yeah.
tier 1.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that, which to his point, with higher commodity prices,
makes it tier 1.
Yeah, it makes it tier 1. But that is a problem as well, that we're just running out of. We drilled with the best rock, and unfortunately, I mean, nothing that we could do about it. But we learned a lot over the last decade, and
Yes, we
we
did.
wasted a lot of rock, right?
Yes.
And I believe, like, I'm on the same page with you that, hey, we're gonna spend a lot thinking about how do we recover more from the assets that we've drilled.
That's the
I
game.
don't think the value is gonna come through the drill bit.
I agree.
Um,
Very little value now is gonna be led through the bid. I think it's gonna be looked at reserves and how well you can get to the remaining
how much
reserves.
oil is typically recovered out of a shale well?
Looking about 4%.
4%.
Yeah.
4%.
Yeah.
That is fucking insane.
So for our technology, we work with some of the people listening may know International Reservoir Technologies, Joe Dozo and them out of Colorado. They're a phenomenal modeling company. They do all the stuff for BP up there in the North Slope. They're pretty famous for that.
Yeah.
They work around, and some of the work we've done with them, when you really look at what you could do with shale, for roughly we're getting ready to do a job for a customer right now. It's going to be able to supply their own fluid because they're just going to use their own essential Y grade fluid. Um, we're going to be underneath 500,000, and they're going to be able to get 1% recovery out of that.
Nice.
So if you can actually get 1% recovery for underneath 500,000 versus 4% recovery for about 10 mil,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see the ROI
Yeah.
flips.
Yeah.
And the more and more now jobs that we're getting under our books, and we're working with our customers to understand how to get efficient, right? Always the first one's the most expensive.
Yeah.
Now we're moving into how our operators are negotiating their fluid contracts to use this system and saying, hey, look, we need propane and butane at this ratio. Hey, we're producing so much of it. How about we go borrow it from ourselves, and driving the cost of our operations so low that the ROIs, in 30 days, they've got the money back and it's still kicking.
Yeah.
And that's where I really think many oil companies are going to be driven to. You can't get steel. One of the operators we're working with just ordered their 2023, 2024 steel. They had to have the order in like 2 months ago, and had to check last month. You can't get steel. You can't get employees. You can't get
That's what I've
trucks.
been telling people. It doesn't matter about capital discipline in oil and gas, because even if you want to go drill, you can't get
drill.
pipe.
Yeah.
You can't get personnel.
That's
You
right. You
can't
can't get
deploy.
cement.
Yeah,
You can't get it.
You can't deploy a frac spread if you don't have personnel. And so not only do you have material shortages, you have human capital
Yep.
shortages as well.
Massive
So,
human
and
capital.
it's a big problem.
One thing that you came from the how would I say, the working in. That's me and my brothers are the same way, right? University for me, what didn't go until I was 36,
Yeah.
after I'd already got my ass handed to me a little bit, right? I love this industry. It's one industry where a regular guy with no education can go take care of himself, right? Take care of his family, do very well for himself. But we ran a lot of people off in this last downturn.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, well, why don't they come back? Well, they just went to Amazon making 90 grand a year driving their trucks, and they're home every night.
Yeah.
They don't got no guy yelling at them.
Or in the
at
warehouse,
2:00 in the
Yeah.
morning, exactly, doing something.
Yeah.
And so I do also think energy companies right now are facing not just one gun pointed at them. There's numerous guns that have no effect, even if they have the money.
Yeah.
And they have the want.
Yeah.
They
That's
can't.
someone asked me at this event at Dallas Crude Association, said, yeah, well, capital can take care of all those pain points, right? And I said, typically I would agree with you, but I don't think that capital fixes the problems, especially when it comes to personnel, because you look at Gen Z's not going to work in the oil field.
Not like this, right?
Yeah.
And the only ones that will be the kids that literally came out of probably the more economic desperate places.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have,
that led them to it, right? Yeah. And that's not what you always want to get the best talent. Not saying there's not great talent there, but we're in a really weird place. A good thing to think about when I talk to people is phosphorus. So we're a chemical company still. We create chemicals and we help out with specialty blends for customers. Phosphorus, the one thing you almost need for so much. You don't think about what you need it for. China has the majority of the mines in the world for it. Yeah. And they just shut down half of them. Yeah. So phosphorus prices are on the skyrocket. These are things that an oil company in the United States cannot control. So how do we increase production? What is there and what do we have to work with? And essentially what single shot is taking frac equipment and using it for a whole new purpose. If there's no more wells to frac for the first time, what do we do with this equipment? Ship it on to Australia or put it on a boat to the Middle East? Yeah. Or do we sit it right here and actually see the asset being able to be used? When we went to Step Energy with this idea, I knew that Step had purchased the gas frac assets.
Mhm.
So everybody's like, man, how would you do this? I'm like, man, I know exactly how to do it. Call Step. Now, at first, I wouldn't raise the money to actually purchase the whole old gas frac, everything. And when I first talked to Mike Burville and the guys at Step, told them what we were doing, um, man, to be honest with you, thankful to say that they kind of like, hey, we kind of like what we got here, but we wouldn't mind working with you. Let's talk. And we were able to work a licensing deal out.
Yeah.
And so we are the engineering side of this part of their license. We UCS does all the engineering background and everything. So when we started building up, the one thing I saw with Step is they were able to say now they had all these kick-ass assets that were on the fence.
Yeah.
How do we use them? And so single shot kind of brought back in many ways a whole division for Step Energy, which if I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, their stock's been doing very well. Yeah, a lot of my friends and family members are very happy. Go Step, keep going.
So let's talk about, let's rewind it back a minute,
Mhm.
because you made a comment about, coming up from the field
Mhm.
and working class. When, what I like about you is, people can't see you, but you're tatted up
We got
and,
a few.
yeah. And what's funny is, like, when I first met you, I was like, oh yeah, this guy's got like field hand vibes,
Mhm.
the way you talk and way you look. And then you start talking, you're like, man, he knows his shit.
I try to know a little bit.
So
I play dumb more than I am.
let's talk about your background.
Mhm.
How'd you get in the oil field?
Quick story, like I was kind of saying earlier, man, out of high school, went and followed dad. He went in the military. I went in the military, did my thing, got out, kind of stumbled through life a little bit.
What branch?
Air Force.
Okay. You
Um,
seen the new Top Gun?
no, I haven't seen
Dude,
it
you got to.
yet.
It's
No.
badass.
I mean, I heard about the mustache thing.
Yeah, the mustache.
Yeah.
Look, I saw it. I'm keeping my beard. I'm
Yeah,
not going mustache.
I don't know, man. I don't know yet. I don't know if the missus would be happy with that mustache. But got out, stumbled through life a little bit. Graduated high school up in North Texas. So both my brothers are at Halliburton. I'm out of the military now. Got an opportunity to go to work at a pumping company and got in with that. Was at San Jail. If
Yep.
y'all remember San Jail,
Yep.
Canadian company.
Yep.
I was there for quite a while out of San Antonio, handling all facilities and whatnot. And a mentor of mine, and now he's actually one of the guys here at the company with me, Dave Nicholas. He asked me one day, like, "Hey man, I got this crazy idea. These guys hit me up with, let's go frack some oil wells of propane and butane." So of course, me is like, "All right, let's just go do it." I thought I was going to the Apple of the oil field. That's why I took the job. Essentially, was I thought, holy shit, if these guys are onto something. I'm seeing in the New York Times all this water being used, how much the Bakken is just getting beat up environmentally, blah blah blah. I'm like, hey man, what could it be worse?
Mhm.
Went over there and spent 3 years and learned so damn much. I saw the writing on the wall. The company was going under more, not because of technology mainly, but what I would consider. I mean, I was in management there.
Mhm.
What I would consider probably not leadership from the top financially.
Yeah.
Probably, right? I remember that was 2008, 10. People were just expense accounts of 30 grand a month to blow, right?
Yeah.
And so I went to go work for a company called Sino out of Canada, and very, very blessed to work for a gentleman by the name of Dr. Sean Mesher, who's actually one of the guys that built the chemistry to gel propane and butane for gas frac. Spent some time working for him in the US, selling hydrocarbon-based oils and fluids, and started building a business inside Hillcorp to help them out with chemistry. And at that point in time, I was offered to take over the business. They're going to get out of the US, and happy, happy, joy, joy. So, of course, I'm fucking all in, throw all my money in the table. And man, I'm telling you, if anybody knows about building a chemical, company, just the insurance policy, it was paid.
Yeah.
And so 2 days before we take over the field for Hillcorp, which would have been a big thing for us, I get the phone call, says, hey, there was some problems done between the last company and billing's not resolved. We can't go forward right now with this plan. 2 years later, they resolved it. So you can imagine I went from having everything and taking a gamble to now it's all gone. And instead of going back to working for someone, I kind of took what I was learning at Gas Frac, and then all these amazing conversations with this incredibly smart guy to, hey, this is what I would be thinking about. If somebody could go work on that, I just, was past him, but he's planting seeds. So I used my GI Bill, and instead of go to work for somebody, I moved into the RV that mom and dad had and started university. And made it through one class. It got into organic chemistry, and the professor kind of wrote an equation on the table, and I said that explains this. And that was my last day in class, and I now have an amazing team of ex-BP executives and senior people around me,
You're
and
like,
we have a
"Huh,
company.
feel like I learned what I needed to learn."
Check out. And so that's kind of how we ended up here. I ended up in the oil field, just like most kids, man. Didn't have a rich mom and dad, had a hardworking mom and dad, work ethic, but never had came from ability. And I sit back and I watch a lot of the guys that are doing really cool things, and sometimes I'm like, man, do they really have the boots, in the corner to show? A lot of them don't have the boots.
Yeah,
If you understand what I mean
I
by
understand what you
that.
mean.
And so yeah, I think the unique thing about our little company over here is that I'm the only guy at the company that doesn't have a college degree.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting
Yeah.
dynamic probably versus most of the other companies
Yeah.
that you hear from.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, obviously it's the same over here. I don't have a college degree either. So, but
In the engineering world, right? It's a very like looking at you like, huh? What the fuck is this guy, man?
but also, when you work out in the field, I mean,
Oh, you're
look,
seeing what's problems.
I made this comment on TikTok the other day. Someone said something about field hands, said something positive about field hands. And I was like, some of the smartest people I know are out in the oil field without college degrees. I mean, I remember my first few weeks on a drilling rig, roughnecking. I remember coming home and talking to my uncle, and I remember being just fucking amazed by these roughnecks on this rig. I was
No
like,
dummies.
they're like mechanics
Yeah.
and engineers. Like, they know shit that's happened. Like, remember, like, it's hard, man, because you get all this downhole knowledge and you forget what it was like on day one, where you're like, how do they know what's happening down there? Like,
That's right.
How do they know?
That's right.
And then, oh shit, a pump's down or a generator's down. They know how to fix it. And it's just like amazing.
It all starts to come together for those guys, right?
Yeah.
I think, Germany's got an amazing engineering system, right? Which is like, hey, if you want to be an engineer, all right, cool, go to school. It's all cool shit. But you got to go do it. If you want to be an HVAC engineer and design heating and mechanical system, you got to actually go install them yourself.
Yeah.
We're not going to award you this degree until you can actually go run
do
with the
it.
dudes.
I
and
think
go
that's
do
one of
it.
the biggest problems with the oil field is
Yes.
the old school engineers. When you got out of school,
You did it.
They put a shovel in your hand. You went out to the
Yep.
field and you
That's
actually
right.
did it. And I think a big problem that the oil and gas industry had, and probably some of my listeners will be pissed off at this, but especially around 2014,
Oh,
you had kids coming out of university. And I mean, these companies were catering to them.
pay them low, do cookie cutter work. It's easy.
Yeah.
That's what they were. And not to be rude, like guys, we were doing cookie cutter work.
Yeah.
How we drilled well 1 is how we're going to drill 2 through 99.
Well, you saw
So-
that across all functions. I mean, like wireline hands. I mean, there's
Yeah.
some guys that all they did was fracking stage work. And I mean, you teach a monkey to run a wireline truck on frack jobs, and
Dude,
then you need to go try to do pipe recovery or through tubing work. And all of a sudden you're like, you have no
Well,
clue what you're doing.
I had a part of our company for a little while was a gentleman by the name of Mike Mace, and he was a good influence for the time that he was with us. And he taught me in this whole thing. He said, Tad, the guy that makes the most money in this whole damn business is the guy with the idea. He says, not the CEO of the oil company. It's that guy that was on the back of the cement truck and said, I could build a different cement truck. And next thing you know, he's got the best. That's the man that did it. And I've really learned a lot in probably the last 2 years, because I've been forced, as you know, I've had to get my from the streets MBA.
Yeah.
I can talk the language. I had to go learn how to do all these different things. At the same time, we had to engineer wells and go down hole. And I think that there's so many of the dudes in the field are the same way, just given chance, right? I just so happened I didn't have kids and a family, right? It was me, a dog, and a cat. Like, let's go throw it all on fucking black and let's see what happens. I really believe in black. I sit back a lot of the time and I debate inside my own head, because private equity gets a bad rap sometimes. Because I have to tell people I'm not backed by private equity. I got to be open and honest. I'm backed by just high wealth individual.
Yeah.
But private equity is what gives ability to kids like me to get a chance.
Yeah.
If you're some kid that doesn't have a grandpa or somebody to go leverage a house on, hey, but you can come with some buddies and come with $300,000-400,000, right? private equity will do a deal with you, give you a chance.
Yeah.
At the same time, do I think they went maybe and asked the investors for too much money during shale? That's a different topic, right? But so I say that I beat up on private equity a lot in one respect, but in the other respect, I have to say, hey, because of private equity, regular dudes get a chance.
Yeah, I think this is a whole other episode because, I mean, you can't talk about private equity in a blanket statement, but I do believe that private equity is tearing up the fabric of the United States.
Oh, many ways,
in certain aspects.
Well, it's the deals that are done, right? So it's not so much the idea of private equity, it's the deals that they strike with the people, right?
Yeah.
And that's where
I think the Blackstones of the world they can be, like one of the biggest problems right now is private equity going up and buying all the single family houses in the United States, like
and flipping it into rentals.
Yeah. That
we all know the number one way to generate wealth, believe it or not, ain't no oil and gas, gang. Yeah. It's actually property.
Yeah. And you're taking away the ability for people to own property. And so, anyways.
The whole different thing, right?
Another topic.
Yeah. And so, but no, when we get into all this, like I sit back and I look at our industry, right? I got two brothers out there, man, both in the patch. One of my brothers over at BJ Energy Solutions. I believe my other brother's over there too now. So it's a family of all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
All my friends and family. And so when I sit back and look at it, I'm like, up until recently, almost all my friends and family in this industry were all non-educated field hands.
Yeah.
And over time, what I'm noticing is like, hey, I can sit at the same table with these guys with these big degrees. What changes is I may not know the word. I may have to Google in the middle of the conversation to learn what words they're using. But I actually know the word. I just know it in a different phrase that we use in the field.
Yeah.
And once you start seeing that, you're like, where is the industry really changing? Where are the big dynamic changes at? It's not coming out of the engineering realm. It's coming out of somebody in the field. Fracking didn't happen because a bunch of guys were in a room drawing up, right? And you look at Halliburton. I mean, the story of Halliburton is an incredible story, right? 5-year-old kid looks at his dad. Why don't we just run cement down it? Well, holy crap, that came from a 5-year-old kid. Here's Halliburton today.
Yeah.
Show me where the step changes were engineered first.
I mean, that's why I'm always so bullish on ideas from people that come from the field or engineering, because they see the problems day in and day out. And why don't we do it like this?
Try.
I mean, it's so interesting too when you think, like you just brought up, how Halliburton was made. I mean, a lot of people don't know the first mud programs were just made with fucking mud pits, cow shit, and literally just putting water, like
literally mud.
Yeah, literally mud.
That's why it's called mud.
It wasn't drilling fluid; it was fucking mud.
It wasn't Clement coming out and giving you the best stuff you could get, right? Like, we were so blessed to be in an industry in which, man, like I get back to all the time. Many times we only see the guys with the white collars on and the fancy shoes. The reality is how many people eat off this business that we don't get to see or hear from, right?
Yeah.
I'm so pissed of any of my friends and family members that I can't find a job that pays worth shit. Well, your liberal arts degree probably didn't pay him, but if you go to West Texas right now, show up with a pair of boots and jeans and look presentable and can piss in a cup, you're leaving out in 30 days with about 10 grand in your pocket.
So I put out a TikTok the other day because people were asking me, how do you get in the oil field? It's crazy. I put out something on Twitter. I put out something on TikTok. There are people that want to come to work. I had a guy send me a message. He's like, hey, I play rugby. He's like, COVID has kind of ruined my contract. He's like, I'm athletic. He's like, I want a job where I can stay in shape. He's like, I saw you talking about the oil field. He's like,
hard frac crew, man.
He's like, hard work, hot weather, lifting heavy stuff. He's like, he's like, how do I get in? I'm like, you go to West Texas. Go live out of your fucking car for a week if you have to right now. You go down I-20, 191, knock on doors. You'll get a job.
Oh, I tell all you got to do is show up. And I tell people, same thing my dad told me, which put on, even when you're poor, you can be clean. We didn't grow up with a whole bunch. We had enough to be clean in my house. I was very blessed in many ways, right? But the thing is, if you just show up in West Texas or anywhere in this industry with a good pair of boots, don't got to be the fanciest stuff. Just show up there and say, hey, I want to work.
Yeah.
This is the last industry. It used to be the steel mills, right? My grandfather made his living in Kansas City steel mills for 45 years, right? You can't do that today.
Yeah.
But the last place a regular dude's got a fighting chance, is the oil and gas business.
I don't know where else you do that. So there are always people. I say you can go out in the oil field entry level, you can go make
To
$80,000, $90,000 a
start.
year, and I'll always get replies. Yeah, but if you look at that on an hour adjusted basis, you're working 100 hours, or it's dangerous, or it's hard work. You don't have work life balance. I'm fucking grateful I had the
Oh,
opportunity to work in
uh,
oil and gas. I graduated high school with a 1.6 GPA. I didn't go to university,
you
but
got
this industry gave me an
uh,
opportunity. It says if you'll come work hard, you can be rewarded. And I'm fucking grateful I had the opportunity to do that. And
I
I know
am
there's a ton of
so
people out there
thankful.
that'd be grateful for the opportunity as
So
well.
a little funny thing about me, you say that I grew up with an interesting childhood already, growing up as a military kid, but I graduated after 5 years of high school, and I literally was told I'll probably never be anything, right? And I just love the ability where there was a time in America a guy could get by, but today, if you really want to get by, there's really no opportunity. Just go get it in the patch.
Mhm.
And I tell, especially guys my age, I'm getting old, and I'm not saying I'm old, I'm 40. I just hit 40, right? Feel old.
I don't consider 40 to be old, but
And when you've been running
this
down
this
this,
ind-
hey,
this
building
industry
a
will make
business, I
this
ain't
in-
got no more hair.
this
So,
industry will make you feel old.
oh, quick. But it's a blessed place, but it's hard to sit back and see like, hey, look, especially like what we're doing, and I love what we're doing with Step Energy because as the tech grows, more employees get brought on, right? And now we're going down a line where, hey, environmental regulations are not going to affect it, right? You can go outlaw water. All you're doing is making us better.
Mhm.
Um, so being a part of actually seeing a crazy idea come out of a head and then built from a team, going to a patent and going to a contract and actually physically seeing this thing going down whole, you couldn't buy that.
Yeah.
Like there's not a price tag on it. But as it scales now, what I also get to see is, hey man, I see my brothers going to work. I see you know what I mean? I see that I know that's going to be protectable from a government source entity to
Mhm.
say, let's slow down.
Yeah.
And I think that's the next step for oil and gas is this ESG thing. Like I never was into it. Um, quite honestly, I still got my own skepticisms, but at the end of the day, that's the game that we're playing. Let's be the best. I grew up, hey, if we're gonna go fish, we leave pick up the trash the other person didn't, right? Always leave things better than you found it.
Yeah.
And I think oil and gas does that already
Yeah.
in many ways. However, I do think Sarah Stoger. I've never talked to her, don't know her, kind of wanted her to be railroad commissioner, but she highlights the places that we are. And there's nothing wrong with going back and saying, let's fix our
There's
downsides.
nothing wrong. Yeah. Nothing. And I think a lot of people in the industry, I don't think I know a lot of people in the industry have
Yeah,
that
I
mentality.
agree.
And
I've
that's something
never
that's need to
met
be
someone that
highlighted.
does
So
that.
it's always about how can we do things better and improve economics and
Hmm.
efficiency along the way. What I love about oil and gas is that you can accomplish all of those things
Quick.
all at one time and
Yes.
quickly too. So yeah, I agree with you 100%
Uh,
there. So, that's it's one reason I like technologies and methods like this because you have to really focus on how can we increase efficiency in oil and gas operations. And I mean, when you talk about, hey, we spend $6 to $10 million on a well and we only recover 4% of the oil, it's not very fucking efficient there. So
well,
how
that's
can
why no
we?
one wants to give us capital, right?
Yeah,
I have this. You were there at New Wave, and I've said this multiple times. Once again, getting back to the private equity deals, but we burned a lot of cash.
hmm
Oil and gas burned a lot of cash. And we burned it in a way because we weren't, in many ways, being honest. We knew in the early days of Shell, 90, 100 days in, we were seeing declines. But there wasn't,
steep declines.
yes. And no, the oil companies knew it, right? But no one went back and said a little bit, hey, guys, we're going to have to drill our way to maintain. And that's where I think private equity and why we can't get capital in many ways. And I think capital is coming back to us,
Yeah.
but it's coming with
Well, that's
terms
what.
now that are
Okay,
not
so
fun.
this is a very deep topic at a meta level because what we're seeing right now is the Biden administration and other entities saying oil and gas companies need to bring production. They need to
Yes,
ramp up production. The
that's
only
right.
way that you ramp up production is by drilling more wells. And the problem is you have steep decline curves, which we know. And
Hmm.
so we're going to be drilling to replace
Yep.
and maintain production. And, you know, yeah, we knew early on a lot of people
We
knew
did.
early on that there were steep decline curves, and that we weren't recovering. We could prove out what reserves were, but
It's the
we knew
reason
that
why
we
money's
weren't.
in conventional now.
Yeah, yeah,
Money's back in the conventional game. We went back 20 years.
and anyways, so this has had a lot of negative second order effects, but now you look at, I think this is one reason why prices are structurally just going to be increased for at
Mhm.
least next couple of years,
Yes.
just because, okay, once we talked about supply chain shortages, okay, now we're at the point where we can drill more if we want to, but
Mhm.
now we're replacing production.
That's right.
So it's going to be, I think oil companies are going to have to put a lot of time. I think you're going to see a paradigm shift where,
You
I hear
are.
a lot of people talking about PDP, and,
Oh, yeah.
it's not just talking about drilling, talking
Mhm.
about production and increasing efficiency in production, and technologies like this are going to play a
You
big
know,
part.
our whole thought process was as we started coming together, and it's as an idea of taking digital wildcatters from you guys just starting, and then all of a sudden, I mean, holy stuff, we got cameras and we got this and we got right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's cool to realize it,
Yeah.
but during the realization, one thing people don't see from the outside of a business is also the holy shit moment. What does this mean? Now we have to do this and that, and how do we have this topic of discussion? And oil companies that we're working with right now are coming and being very open with us and saying, hey, look, we're really into this tech. We like where we're going. We like the ability to reuse and recycle our fluids and whatnot. They're really also telling us that, look, we know that we don't have nowhere else to go. And if we don't figure something out differently, we can't drill our way out now. Now, a management team that may have their own capital in it, now they're getting nervous, right? Because, hey, we did really well. We probably made our money out. But if we were to go sell right now, even at a high price, hey, no one's buying right now. No
Mhm.
one's going to buy $107 PDP
Yeah.
because if Putin goes tomorrow, all of a sudden, Russia's
Yeah.
oil's back on the
You bought
market.
at the top.
You're
Yeah.
at 60.
Mhm.
You might as well just not even come to work the next day. Just hand the keys over to your investors and
Yeah,
just say,
for sure.
have a good day, go
For sure.
home. And no, I think we're in a great time to see great technologies. I kind of wish there were more coming out.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot, but
I think you will see a lot more. I mean,
I think
look,
we are.
super bullish on humans' ability to innovate and
Yeah.
come up with solutions. And when people see a problem, they find a solution. We
And
know this.
How do they build the? I've been laughing a lot about how they build the pyramids in Egypt, right? Like we can figure this out,
Yeah.
And I think we're going to. I'm having so much fun. Our team's having so much fun, right? We had a great well. We've had great success coming. Operators coming, but the a weird blessing for us has also been timing's been great, man. I got my deal with Step at $30 oil.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be $30 oil for the
For a
next
long
5
time.
years.
Yeah.
Right. And so now we're staring down 120 or whatnot. And the amazing education we've got over the last 2 years, just understanding how this thing really comes together.
Yeah.
Working with companies like Fesco, the Steps, the IRTs, and being out there. I think if I could say anything to these startups, I see a lot of them come in sometimes and they want to roll the whole machine by themselves. But what we figured out at UCS is, it's just little dummy Tad and some really smart people.
Mhm.
How about we partner up with people that have already got that box checked and that box checked? And next thing you know is you then have like a little mini army behind a technology.
Yeah.
And that changes people.
Growth by
they're in.
partnership is a very viable way to grow.
I didn't come from the money to grow any other way.
Yeah.
And that's why I also get upset when I hear guys say, well, I just can't raise money. I say, look, man, I went a long ways on. So I lived majority of the time building UCS. I get a disability check from the military, but I got fired from Mattress firm. I got fired from a pest termite place.
How are you gonna get fired from Mattress firm?
Oh, dude. Well, when you're doing chemistry homework, laying on the beds at night, not selling, it's funny. I got a message from one of the guys that let me go a while back because I was telling people what I was doing at these jobs, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm working on this, it's bigger and better. And of course, everybody's like, you're stupid. No way, right? You hear this like, oh, never going to happen. And now I'm getting emails from people that say, hey, man, You got any jobs, man? This ain't mattresses, boys.
Have you heard of the Mattress Firm conspiracy theory?
No. What is this? I
Oh
gotta
my
hear.
gosh, dude. So there's this entire conspiracy theory, which I've gone deep down this rabbit hole of Mattress Firm is a massive money laundering scheme.
No one's
because
ever there.
No one's ever there. And the density of Mattress Firm stores. So over
They're
in
everywhere.
Katy, there is an intersection and there's 4 Mattress Firm, either a Mattress Firm or a subsidiary, off-brand of Mattress Firm, all on the same intersection.
I worked across the street from the other mattress firm. We had 2
Yes,
mattress firms staring at each other, man.
Everywhere that there's a Mattress Firm, there's another one right across from it. And so I've done some back of the envelope math on, what's the average
I would
duration of buying
one customer a night.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
And they wouldn't buy.
So
Right? They
so
came in and talked.
I've got first. That's what I was going. I was like, how many people actually come through the stores? Because that's the whole thing. Is like you buy a mattress every 8 years on average.
Yeah.
And you take the population of Katy, it's how many mattress firms are in.
The math don't work, right?
The math from an operator perspective, I'm like, the math doesn't check.
So
out.
how I got fired, right, was so I was in school. So once again, I'm 36-year-old dude going back to university, old man, right on campus, right? And I'm like the bum because everyone's looking at me like, but no one understood that I just came from a really good background, leading a huge company in the U.S., right? Here I am now, just a guy in an RV working at Mattress Firm. I learned a lot. Let me just tell you, America doesn't care about poor people. I was one, and as a joke. And but so I'm there doing my organic chemistry work, and the manager of everybody walks in, of course, to go try to help him out, and I didn't know who the guy was, and he starts telling me about why I shouldn't be doing this. I said, well, my boss lets me at night work on my work while I'm doing this. Blah blah blah. Next thing I know, I was fired the next morning. And I said, what did I do wrong? They said, well, essentially the guy felt like you told him he was stupid. And I was like, okay, that was me. That probably was me. But,
good way to get fired.
So, I tell people, if you're in a startup, you got to be really jump in. I've been blessed. I will say, maybe a lot of people haven't, like financially, I haven't seen that blessing, but I will tell you the freedom and the fun and the people, it's worth every bit. I'm sure you guys feel the same way. It's hard. It sucks.
Yeah. When you get to wake up and work on something that you're passionate about, it's super underrated.
Dude, when I get to walk around with jars like that and take them into lunch meetings and say, hey, let me get on your well, right? It's a fun thing. And there's no dollar that could ever replace the feeling of feeling like you actually did something.
Yeah.
But I lead that in to go say, there's so many of the ideas that I know are still good ideas that are sitting in the field. Mm-hmm. And if I was a energy company and I was an operator, I would almost put more focus on my R&D program to come from the field.
Yeah, for sure.
The downside and what I'm learning is because I'm very surrounded by very good now engineers that have been doing big things at big companies for 20, 30 years. Some of the things I notice is though is like, hey, yo, they don't really know how it goes down. Mm-hmm. Like, yo, y'all don't know what a frack job really means when you're zipper fracking and rigging out, rigging in, and swinging hammers. It's late. It's snowing in Minot, North Dakota at fucking -40, and you see brine water freeze. Yo, like you don't know.
There's like a lot of implied knowledge.
Yeah,
that comes
steel
from
doesn't work the same at -40, man. It doesn't feel the hammers don't feel the same. And
there's that's what I say all the time is that when you spend those cold nights, I mean, you learn a lot just about how shit actually works out in the field. So, Tad, we got to wrap this one up. Where can people find you if they want to reach out and learn more
easily,
about this?
I'm not on TikTok and stuff, but LinkedIn, UCS, we're getting a new website right now. But the other way to find a way to get to us is Step Energy. If you reach out to a local step guy, if you got a step sales rep, just say, hey, we're interested in that tech. They'll line everything up and we'll get in the room and me and the gang will come help make a positive action happen.
Cool.
So it's that simple. Shoot me a message on LinkedIn or screw you or whatever you want, and I'll probably respond. So thank you so much, man. Yeah,
man. Appreciate you coming on the show. Guys, if you want to reach out to Tad, you can go find him on LinkedIn. We'll drop a link to his LinkedIn in the show notes. Appreciate you coming on the show, man.